just a quick reminder, it looks like we're doing pretty well, but mute your microphones and your cameras, please. Okay, I'm gonna kick us off here. Thanks everybody for joining us today. We're very lucky to have this group here. We really appreciate them joining us. This is the NAIOP Triad March program featuring the presidents of the 3 Triad Chambers of Commerce, Greensboro, High Point, and Winston. I would like to remind everybody, please keep your mics muted and your cameras off. And also know that at the end of the program, we're going to do a networking session like we did last time, probably 10 or 15 minutes, very impromptu, would encourage everybody to join. I would like to recognize our sponsors for today's program, CT Wilson Construction, Marsh McLennan Agency, and S&ME. We're really appreciative for all of our sponsors. They make these programs work for us. I would also like to recognize that Taylor Butler, who is going to be introducing Doug, is with CT Wilson Construction as their business development director. And I'm going to turn it over to her.
Thank you, Alex. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here. I have the honor and privilege of introducing our moderator for today's program, Doug Copeland. Doug serves as Director of Furnitureland Contract, the commercial furniture division of Furnitureland South. Doug has held leadership roles in several area businesses and organizations. After 8 years in Washington, where he served in staff roles in Congress and the White House, he returned to North Carolina. Doug joined Cone Health as vice president and was part of a turnaround team that transformed the single hospital into a multi-hospital system. Following 19 years at Cone, he served as president and publisher of the Triad Business Journal for 16 years. He came to Furnitureland South a year ago after leading an area clinical trials company, which was first in human testing on new pharmaceuticals for 4 years. In his career, Doug has led or served on more than 36 state and local boards and commissions, and currently serves on the boards of visitors for High Point University and the UNC Greensboro and the University of Greensboro. He is also a member and past president of the Greensboro Rotary. Doug is a graduate of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. He received the National Leadership Award from the National Association of Community Leadership Programs and the Spirit of Entrepreneurship Award from Junior Achievement of Central North Carolina and the Greensboro Chamber of Commerce's Leadership Award for a lifetime of public service. So we definitely have a wonderful representative from the Triad here in our midst today, and we are thankful to have Doug as our moderator for today's program. Doug?
Thank you, Taylor and Alex. I know my first task is to cut out about 90% of that introduction. I hope y'all will bear with me in that I'm sure you know our three guests today, so their introduction is going to be briefer, only so we can get to the content of the program. So, moving from west to east, let me introduce first Mark Owens, President and CEO of Greater Winston-Salem, Inc. He has over 10 years of experience building communities through economic development. He was named President and CEO of the Winston-Salem Chamber in 2017, and that, like so many organizations, has changed its structure somewhat and changed its focus to respond to the current environment, and now called Greater Winston-Salem, Inc. He came to Winston-Salem from the Greater Greer Chamber of Commerce in South Carolina, where he's president and CEO. Like all of our guests today, he's very involved in the community. He's a Charleston native and a graduate of Presbyterian College. Next, in our geographic move from west to east, is Patrick Chapin. He became president and CEO of Business High Point in 2016. He's from Orlando, has extensive leadership experience, both in the private for-profit sector and not-for-profit sector. He has an interesting background, which includes 10 years with the Walt Disney Company and also executive director of the Sarasota Family YMCA. He came to High Point after serving 7 years as president and CEO of the Winter Park Chamber of Commerce. He's a graduate of Florida State, and like our others, has a tremendous number of volunteer and passion things to his credit. And last but certainly not least is Brent Christensen, who joined the Greensboro Chamber of Commerce as its president and CEO in 2015. Like the other chambers, it has a number of vital moving parts below it. He joined us after serving 3 years as executive director of the Mississippi Development Authority, and has served in roles in the Gainesville Area Chamber of Commerce in Gainesville, Florida, and a number of other organizations. He holds his MBA from the University of South Carolina and his bachelor's degree from Duke University. So with that start, I'm just going to let the three rivals fight it out over college basketball, and y'all can watch. No, seriously, you know,
I think Patrick's got us beat on that. I mean, Florida State, I think, has the best chance this year. So we're rooting for you, Patrick.
Thanks for jinxing me. Appreciate it.
We're rooting for you, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. And my MBA is from the University of South Florida, not South Carolina. Not that I would have anything against that state to our south, since they brought us Mark, but South Florida, Doug.
Thank you for the correction. And
no worries, no worries.
Well, you know, now we can really finally, I believe, see light at the end of the tunnel. But COVID-19 changed us all individually, changed our companies, changed organizations. Let's look back a little bit, and we're going to move forward from a year ago to the present and future in our conversation today. Talk a little bit about when this hit and how you had to morph existing programs to continue to be viable and engaged. And Patrick, you're on the center of my screen, so I'll just start with you on that one.
Sure. You know, we're a little bit different than the other chambers. They do a lot, basically everything we do, but they also do economic development. Our economic development is housed within the city. So I often say we're a chamber of community. We're a third place where people come together, home being first place, work being second place, and these third places that bring us together, like the YMCA or Rotary Club. And because we're so interconnected on a personal level, it was very much of a challenge. Events are a revenue driver for us, but it's also the spirit of who we are. So we really had to get social media savvy more so. And luckily I have a really bright team. So we created some initiatives that I can talk about as we continue the conversation that we're very proud of, that help engage our members and also help engage the broader community. But the one thing I'll just close in this comment was we really focused on 2 to 3 months out all the time. We never tried to figure out what 6 months was going to look like, or 9 months, or a year. So that was something we were very deliberate in doing. I think that helped as well, even from a kind of morale standpoint.
So on the same issue, how you had to morph existing campaigns, let's move to the gentleman who has his MBA from the University of South Florida, Brent Christensen.
Thank you. You know, and Patrick, that's a really good point. You said, don't look too far ahead, 2 to 3 months. Unfortunately, we have a lot of members that aren't looking much further than 2 to 3 weeks in advance. And so morphing events, yes, but morphing into more communication, communicate, and more rapid communication as things changed. I remember sitting out watching an ACC tournament on the big screen right outside the Performing Arts Center, the new Performing Arts Center, which still hasn't opened, and thinking, watching the ACC tournament get canceled and watching all the other conference tournaments get canceled and wondering, okay, what are we going to do next? And that was right before the weekend. So we had a little bit of time to kind of figure out what do we need to do to pivot. And I'm tired of using that term. There are a lot of terms I'm tired of using, but pivot's one of them, but that was the way you do it. And I think the next week we had the first of almost 50 daily action calls at the chamber, where we just invited everybody at, I want to say it was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, to join in and let us tell you what we've learned, what we think you ought to be thinking about. And we did that, like I said, every day from 3 o'clock for nearly 2 months, just to make sure everybody had all the information they needed. And I remember the first call we had a banker on, I probably won't mind me saying his name, Scott Baker. And Scott's advice at the very beginning was, if you don't know your banker, if you can't get your banker to call you back, and if you don't know them well, you better figure it out fast, because we're going to be critical to your success going forward. And boy, truer words were never spoken. But we did everything from PPE calls to PPE calls to how to use this new tool that everybody was discovering in Zoom, to how to clean workstations so that they were sanitary. I mean, I never thought we'd host a call on how to clean things up. My wife tells me how to do it all the time. I'm not very good at it, and I'm sure a lot of our members weren't very good at it either, but now we all know how to sanitize work sessions and others. And Mark's got his right there. I mean, we're never too far away these days from hand sanitizer or Lysol wipes or something along those lines. So, we just had to make sure we were communicating and doing it as quickly as we possibly could. I think Patrick's hit it really well in terms of events and moving those to virtual as well. But I would say communicate, and do it rapidly.
And I think you both are right on. I mean, I echo that. I think the only other thing I would say is that we were all learning it together. A lot of times we can bring experts to groups and conversations that are really good at certain areas, like bringing in Scott and a banker, whatever that may be. Nobody knew. We were all learning it every day and digesting that information. I would just say as well, for all of us, our advocacy efforts became even more important. And you realized real quickly that building the relationships during maybe down periods could pay dividends if we had those relationships in that time of crisis. I mean, we really focused on daily, like Brent and Patrick did, but we did daily advocacy updates of where the relief's coming from, what happened here. And that was very not normal for us to do. Those advocacy efforts sometimes look very long-term when you look at our agendas and different things, but those relationships proved to be invaluable through the process as we still are digesting the next stimulus package and trying to help turn governmental language into something all of us can understand and realize how to access those funds and those support systems. I would just say as well, we're really good at going out and meeting people and running into people and being present, getting to know people and staying connected in that virtual world. We're all trying to do that. It's different. You have to be very intentional. And then I would just add managing the staff. I mean, our organization, our first day of Greater Winston-Salem Inc. was technically April 1st. So we have team members that have never met each other in person still to this day. And that is, and much like all the people that are on this call, your businesses, you may not have met everybody in the last period of time. So still learning. We all are changing and tweaking it, but there is that light at the end of the tunnel, I think, hopefully.
Mark, I would add, I love the advocacy part, because we were certainly in touch with public officials constantly who were asking us, what's going on in the business community? What are you hearing? How can we help? That sort of thing. And so the first round of PPP comes out, and 501c6 organizations like ours are not eligible. And so, I picked up the phone and called, congressional friend, and their response was, well, how did you not let me know this ahead of time? And I said, well, because I'm more concerned right now with our members than I am about our own organization. And that's just the way chambers are. So, I didn't know, none of us really knew that 501c6 were going to get left off. But that's because we've got our heads down and are worried more about our business members than we are about ourselves.
Absolutely.
So just for our guests today, we're going to leave a little time at the end of the program for questions. So if you do have questions, please enter them, if you will, in the chat box. The part of the new normal, I guess, is all of us being Zoom experts. And Brent, that's what I never want to hear again is the new normal, even though I use the term, but please enter them in the chat box and we'll find some time at the end to share that. So let's move forward a little on the calendar, if you will. You both talked about how you had to move quickly to change what you were doing. Do any of you have new initiatives that you created, things that you wouldn't have even thought of before this happened that you'd like to share with the group? And I'll start with whoever raised their hand.
I'll jump in because I just looked at myself and I wanted to point out this is not a purse or my computer bag, and I'm about to take off. I am in a sling, so I apologize for the casualness. I don't even have a blazer on like my colleague Brent. So we shifted, well, a couple things. Zoom, we talked about how we're all zoomed out, but it did give us some opportunities. We were able to do some expert programming around Zoom that we probably couldn't afford or get here in High Point. Dr. Cobain was generous with getting us some great speakers from around the country. So that was something that was new and exciting. And then our State of the City was virtual. So it was live for Dr. Cobain, myself, and the mayor in person, but it was Zoomed out or Facebooked out or whatever we call it. And we found it reached a ton more people. So instead of our 400 people at the lunch that we always see, it was several thousand people when it was all said and done, which gave us an idea that we probably will stick with when it comes to State of the City. It also gave our sponsors great value, quite honestly, or more value, because it reached a different and new audience. And then specifically around social media, we created a food mob, which is going strong. If you haven't done High Point Food Mob, it's about 9,700 people. And what's nice about that is we created it, now it's taken on a life of its own. One last program that I'll mention is Community First, Community Always. And that was an initiative, our staff, we were sitting around one day and we thought, wow, it seems like we should be down in the dumps, when it first happened, and we're kind of a month or two into all this. But every staff meeting we came to the table, someone mentioned something cool they saw, whether it was Harris Covington going from hosiery to Mass, or I was running one day and saw chalk words written by a little girl in our neighborhood. So we created Community First, Community Always, and that was just a Facebook platform. And it was a platform where people could just post really cool stories. So try to drown out all the negative, and it caught on. Again, all we had to do was put out the mechanism, and everyone around the community posted amazing stories that were inspiring and kind of kept us going through it all.
Mark?
Those are great, Patrick. I think, likewise, some of the local, buy local campaign we launched, so BUY or BYE local, and just, I wouldn't say necessarily were new, but it amplified some of that local intentional efforts and really making sure that we're focused on our small businesses. Our organization was a little different as well, as we were creating ourselves during this and hiring for positions. So we had to do some virtual site visits. We had to do we showed a building on FaceTime and walked around and had FaceTime on and showed some office building space. So trying to figure out utilizing that technology. I think we subscribe to every platform, like we all mentioned right away. I would say also that, we started to try to get leaders in front of the community, just like Brent mentioned and Patrick. So we launched a Lunch with Leaders program so that it was just trying to make conversation happen that you miss. So we sat back and said, you miss running into somebody at your favorite restaurant or your brewery. How do we create those in different ways? Whether that's via Zoom, whether it's utilizing some online chat options, or just intentional, phone calls and outreach to people to check in. And then we did some grant programs as well that I know we'll touch on as we go through the conversation.
And Brent?
Yeah, Doug, I don't know that we've got programs that were started, but more so enhanced. And so I would say, looking forward, I think we'll see a lot of programming be be more hybrid, right? So having an in-person component, having a perhaps Zoom component, or perhaps watch afterward. I mean, I think what we're learning is we can do a lot of this programming and record it and have people time shift. I can tell you, we've done a lot of that at the chamber, whether it be a lunch and learn, or whether it be a full-on annual meeting or our impact leadership conference, that we're getting, screen time late in the evening or early morning hours when people have the time to go back and watch it. So, it's going to be very interesting. I think when the coast is clear, so to speak, we've gone from one side of the spectrum where, everything is online and we're trying to stay apart from each other, social distance. We'll probably go to the other end of that spectrum, and everything will be in person and everybody will be excited to see each other. And then probably we'll settle long-term in the middle somewhere where we'll do some things in person and we'll be able to do more programming because, as Patrick says, you can Zoom in an expert from anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world, and bring that to your membership. So I'm looking forward to seeing the way things shape out over the next 2 to 3 years after this, because we've learned a lot of things to do and probably things not to do as well. So it'll be an interesting next couple of years.
Mark touched on the buy local campaign, and buy local was something that was being emphasized long before the Amazon tsunami hit with the coming of COVID. But do you have, Brent and Patrick, do you have anything you want to add about how you, and Mark as well, of course, but you've already brought it up, that you did anything different, new about buy local during this time? Because I hate to say it, but all of us we became as familiar with Amazon as we are with Zoom. So Patrick, I'll start with you, if in terms of the buy local emphasis and any initiatives, programs, or communication.
Well, I think the one that was really significant, both because it was buy local, but also it was regional. And we really thank our friends at the Piedmont Triad Partnership for rounding up these three monkeys here, Mark and Brent and myself, to create something called #Triad Together. So it was a regional campaign. We all had our separate buy local campaigns that were specific, and like for us, we partnered with the Rockers and so forth. But that was important and uplifting. It really was nice because it got us out of our little box and it got us to communicate with one another. The creativity, of fresh ideas was just exciting. So I just tip my hat to them. And we're still, you probably see PSAs on that still today. So really appreciate them leading that effort.
Well, and Patrick, we had a fourth monkey in that midst as well, with Mac Williams and Alamance, who's on the call today as well. So it really did reach out to a number of chambers and throughout the region, asking people to be intentional about their purchases. I had a call today with a logistics provider who said, what the pandemic did was condense about 3 to 5 years worth of evolution with regard to e-commerce down into about 1 year. And so, with that, we've got to make sure that we're continuing to look local first, which was our campaign. Restaurants are easy, right? Because they're local, and you're going to want to make sure that you're continuing to patronize them. But purchases that you could very well do on Amazon, you've got to be very intentional about, whether that's a book, whether that's a baseball mitt, whatever that is. I remember, one of my first lessons in looking local was my son is left-handed and he wanted to play catcher. And so trying to find a right hand or a catcher's mitt that will fit somebody's right hand rather than left hand is not easy to do if you have a left-hander, or if you are a left-hander. And so I went to the local sporting goods store and they didn't have it. And I said, well, I'll probably just order it online. They said, whoa, I can get you the same thing you're going to buy online in the same time frame. You just have to drive here and pick it up. And so absolutely, I'll do that. And today, these small businesses will probably deliver it to you at this point. If they're not delivering it, then they need to find some way of doing it, but they'll probably deliver it to you, or at least get you curbside to do that sort of thing.
Yeah, and that's a great example, Brent. I think, and the Alamance Strong that Mac did was great. And thanks to the Wyndham as well, helping get out the Triad Together piece. What we talked about, I echo what they said is, when we're working from home, we already have our normal tendencies and our normal routes, to and from the office or to and from school. Well, those, even if shrink down, we really encourage you still today. I try to take different ways home, and you find new businesses, you find new restaurants. We're supposed to know what all of them are, and I still find new ones as we take different routes in different places. So it's really, you have to be intentional. I think that word was exactly right, Brent, that we have to be intentional about that. So we had the same kind of experience at Southern Home and Kitchen. You could buy this plate anywhere, but you want to go support those that are doing that, because I think our retail environment is going to be drastically continuing to change. But really proud of the resilience of the small businesses in our communities, how quickly they innovated and updated points of sale and added online options to make those purchases and went to curbside. So I think I think that's still a problem, Doug, as you mentioned. I think it's not going to go away as Amazon continues to take market share. So I think even post this, we're all going to still need to be very intentional about buying local and thinking local first.
Yeah, we were very concerned. I know you all were as well, about the restaurant industry as we got into the winter months, cutting into outdoor dining, where people felt more comfortable. And one of the hybrid things, Doug, the examples that I would bring up is, we had our annual meeting in January, and typically we feed people at our annual meeting. And obviously we weren't getting together, so we weren't feeding people. So we came up with the idea of everybody who signs up and buys a ticket to our annual meeting, we're going to get them a gift card to a local restaurant, so that they can go feed themselves at a local restaurant. And I know we got a few calls where people wanted to tell us the restaurant to send to them. Mark, to your point, we did that randomly because we wanted people to learn about new restaurants and experience new restaurants. But we spent a good deal of money, and then we even had some extras. We bought extras, and we donated those to the volunteers out at our vaccination sites in Guilford County, to thank them. If you've been to a vaccination site, these days how much manpower and woman power and every other power you need to run a vaccination site like that. So we donated all of the leftovers, a good amount of meals to them as well.
Well, I heard Brent and Mark both use the term intentional. And so as we move forward in the calendar, if you will, and we can see the light, we can almost are at the end of the tunnel. But I've heard Brent use the term being intentional about the recovery. We've been focused on being closed for the past 12 months. And candidly, it's going to be hard for all of us. I mean, I'm addicted to hand sanitizer. I'll just tell you, one of those things sits in my car and I hit it every time I get in the car, no matter where I've been. So we're all going to have to really work to change our behaviors. Let's talk about the recovery, and let's talk about it in two ways, if we might. First part of each your question, what you are going to be doing to be intentional about the recovery and help us. And then you've all given a little bit of advice through some of your ideas about things we can do, drive home a different way, go to a different restaurant, sort of those things. So let's make the second half of that question, what this audience can do to be intentional about the recovery. And Brent, since I first heard you use that term, I'm going to start with you.
Now, and I'm going to kick it over to Patrick, because Patrick needs to talk about the joint venture that we're doing in terms of the recovery in Guilford County. So I'm going to let age go before beauty in this case on this one. I'll throw you a little bit of a curveball, although I think I might be a little older, Patrick. I'm not sure.
Let's just say you're going function over fashion today.
Okay.
So yeah, we, all the three of us specifically have built a great relationship, and I appreciate Mark reaching out literally the first week he came into town. I I still haven't gotten you and your wife to the market yet. I think that's intentional. Speaking of intentional, you're not coming.
You have got us there. We did go. We just didn't get to go with you. And so,
Okay.
yes, we'll go next time.
And Brett and I, coming from Florida and arriving around the same time and hearing about this invisible wall between High Point and Greensboro, well, we were just too dumb to ever think that existed. So we've partnered together, and one of those partnerships is very, very intentional, and it's been led by a community-wide group of the leaders in Guilford County specifically, the city of High Point, Greensboro, and Guilford County. And it is a Restart Guilford County initiative, and it's a very strategic program. It's being led by Bruce Katz, who is the author of New Localism. If you haven't read that book, it's an incredible read, and I'm not a highbrow. It's just very practical. It talks about how power has shifted to the problem solvers and away from government, and more local people like us can really change the dynamics of our communities. But he was chief of staff for a HUD secretary. He comes very, very high credibility. And what we're doing is we're prioritizing and getting ready for the deployment of these federal funds, specifically around equity in small businesses. So, Black-owned, minority-owned businesses and small businesses, because as we all know in the chamber world, especially 85% of businesses in North Carolina are small businesses, and not SBA small businesses, 500 or less, 19 or less is what we are small business in that regard, which makes up about 25% of the job. So this opportunity, it took a lot of fundraising, around $600,000, but it really showed how intentional and how collaborative people across our county have become in solving our issues. So we're going to be better suited. There's $179 million we think is going to be in the pipeline for Guilford County, meaning Guilford County and the two cities. And the sooner we are ready and identify where those priorities are, we're going to be better suited than other communities around the country. And just as an illustration, there's about 4 or 5 other communities and their cities, and they're different than this partnership we have. They're more like Cincinnati, Louisville, Cleveland, Philadelphia. So we're pretty unique, and this is a special opportunity for us in Guilford County. So that's what Brent was referring to. You're going to hear a lot more about that, but we're very excited about it.
Mark, you want to talk a little bit about how you and how we can do better about being intentionally local in the recovery?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's great. And, I love our region and what we're doing. So just to echo that, and thank you for, we in Forsyth County kind of separate, we are trying to organize as well around understanding what could come that direction. We've done a lot of private grant raises as well. I think we're right at like $1.7 million in grant raises for our small businesses. Like Patrick said, we're not talking 500 or less. We're talking 19. We're talking 2 people. We're talking really small businesses here, and it's really impressive. I think with the audience here as well with NAIOP, I'll hit on it. Everybody can do their part in shopping local and things, but I'll also just kind of hit on the economic development perspective quickly. Just being thoughtful about, we're very intentional about how to schedule people back in the office. We're flowing through that and seeing how do we make sure teams come back in person safely, intentional to make sure people get to know each other through that. We have been very intentional in our marketing as a mid-sized city. We see that there's an opportunity for our region with our size, specifically Winston-Salem, that we have an opportunity to take advantage of that recovery by saying these denser, larger major metros like in New York or Boston, Chicago, Dallas, et cetera, Houston, for example, people are looking at quality of life and they're making their decisions based off of safety, off of healthcare, and off of that work-life balance that's different. And so I think that's what we're doing. We're seeing a ton of uptick in industrial. Whitaker Park has been really hot for us. I know Bob's on the call and doing a great job with Whitaker Park. Is filling up, almost out of space there. So we're being intentional about the recovery from a job perspective of trying to work with our public officials, identifying more opportunities, recruiting hard, but also helping the companies stay here, like Brent's big win yesterday and keeping a headquarter here, and really making sure our region is focused on growing those jobs. What everybody on this call can do is tell that story, tell people about it, especially if you're in the real estate or construction market. Let people know about what our region has to offer, invite them here, and let's help be intentional about getting visitors back in and get people back in the businesses. So those would be some areas on a high level. I think I already touched on my fun thing is try to find different routes home and try different restaurants. But at some point, we've got to be the ones that show that it's safe to go back into the businesses as well. So, take those pictures, do the hashtag Try It Together, let people see it and lead by your actions, I think could be really helpful.
Doug, let me add one thing, because we've declared at the Greensboro Chamber this to be the year of the small business. Every year is the year of small business, but we wanted to be intentional about making sure that people understood small business is key. The survival and growth of small business, especially in 2021, is going to be key. We put a poll in the field, or a survey in the field, to kind of find out what we don't want to be presumptuous. We want to know, what do those small businesses need? What are their challenges right now? How can we help? And so you'll be seeing more out of the result of that survey here in the next few weeks. But I would also say, I keep going back to that intentional word. Be on the lookout for ways that you can help. So, for example, Downtown Greensboro Inc., and I know Zach's on the call, is bringing back the open streets idea on coming up on Saturdays. It was a great idea, continues to be a great idea, an opportunity to come downtown and stroll and shop and drink and eat. And so, take advantage of those sort of opportunities to buy local and to be local. And then, to Mark's point, show it off. Let's make sure that people know that things are open. I mean, staycations would be awesome as well, right? Our hotel and motel industry could use some help as well. So, take a stay at one of our local hotels when you get a chance, maybe in the springtime, and that sort of thing.
And Doug, I just add one brief comment, and that is, be intentional in reaching out to your chambers. We're here to help you guys, especially this group. If you have issues, with local municipalities, getting stuff done, we're your gatekeepers. We can get in there and get some, so share those great stories, but also utilize us for problem solving, because there is, everyone's going through this adjustment, and there's probably going to be a little bit of hiccups until we're all back on track, especially in the form of some of the city and county kind of processes. So use us. That's what we're here for, and that's what you pay your dues for.
Mark touched on it earlier about how chambers of commerce are really good at going out and meeting people and bumping into people and holding events. With the lockdown in place, we may not have seen all the things the chambers do, and you all have each touched on how you work together. We talked about some specific programs. In front of this audience, is there anything you want to share about your cooperative attitude, efforts, initiatives, et cetera? And Mark, I might start with you on that one.
Sure, absolutely. I think, a lot of it is behind the scenes. We work together a lot, the three of us, as well as other partners in the Carolina Core and the Piedmont Triad Partnership. I think we meet twice a month now still. Our staffs now meet jointly as well, talking marketing efforts and programmatically. We do R&D, rip off and duplicate. So we've got our restaurant gift cards ready for our annual meeting. We're using Swipe By. So we love the idea. Brent inspired us. So we're going to do it. We're going to use a startup here to do an app and hopefully get people to use that app and support local restaurants. So I would say from the marketing effort, that is very high. I'll take it a step forward on the economic development. Brent does a great job of reaching out. We did a joint site visit for our region about a week or two ago, where we had different sites across the region, and we tag team who had lunch and where we're handing people off and making sure they're seeing every part of that. And we also have had some meetings with our elected officials together to showcase what the region looks like and how we're pushing forward there. So I would say there's a good chance that everything we're all doing, we're talking to each other, and that includes MAC and our other partners across the region. Also transportation. I think we all are focused on the airport. The airport is a massive thing for our region. So we're appreciative of what DOT is doing and investing in our communities and seeing that infrastructure piece. We have a combined message for that. So I think those would be some areas to highlight.
And Mike Fox is on the call. So thank you, Mike, for everything you're doing to make sure the transportation infrastructure in the Triad is continuing to grow. Brent, you want to add anything to the cooperative conversation?
Well, I would say, and Wright Archer, who's a district engineer for DOT, is on as well. Right, good to see you. And I would also introduce Marvin Price, who's our new EVP of Economic Development, is on the call. I know, again, hiring people in the middle of a pandemic when normally, Marvin would have been on the lunch circuit for about 3 or 4 months, meeting everybody, and he hasn't had a chance to necessarily do that other than through a screen. So we're looking forward to making that happen as well. But I think Mark hit on some great opportunities. I mean, the good news is that all three of us get along really well. There's no real natural rivalry because there are no Tar Heels amongst the mix. So we're good there. Although I worry about Patrick in Florida State, since I I've raised a Gator somehow. But whether it's the economic development side or whether it's the chamber side, we're talking quite a bit. We're sharing, and Mark, I'm gonna steal your R&D quote there, because we steal ideas, we share ideas, and we're doing an awful lot of talking to make sure that what we're doing is complementary and not competitive.
Yeah, Brent, it was interesting. I'm sure you remember I emailed you one time and said, great idea, do you mind if I rip it off? And you're like, you don't need to email me anymore, because otherwise I would be emailing you. You just mentioned something about kind of the chamber side and the economic development side. And one thing that I think is universal on both sides of those coins that is our school system, especially in Guilford County, the need to improve our schools. And that's just the way it is. And there's a very strong county initiative that came out with the bonds, and I know the Greensboro Chamber board voted in support of it, as we did. We took it a step further because we have a PAC, Political Action Committee. When I arrived, we created a PAC and focused on getting the right people, pro-business leaders, because baseball stadium was a really big initiative. We took that PAC and have now made it a super PAC, so Guilford County. And it's not politics, but we wanted to get people on the county school board who were going to support schools in the way that we thought that they should. And you've seen a change in that. Again, it's not partisanship, it's a change in philosophy. And I can tell you, the majority of the PAC are probably, Republicans. And it's probably the first time they ever wrote a check to some Democrats, because we just weren't getting some of the support we needed specifically for schools. So I don't want to get political, but that's the reality. And that's just something that I was especially proud of in terms of what the community did. They said, if we want a strong economy, we need strong schools. If we are going to get the bonds and the strength in our school system, we need a different style of leadership. Is not working the way it is. It may swing back, but it was a county-wide initiative that really seemed to, bring people together. And that's not very often in politics, as you know, Doug.
We've got 2 more topics before we close out, if you will. And if the audience has any questions, please put them in the chat box. But we've talked so much about COVID and the shutdown and this, but this past year has also yielded many conversations about the minority community. Many minority businesses are also small businesses, so they fit, if you will, in both sectors, both facets. Share with us, if you will, initiatives which have emerged to address minority business. And Mark, I just happen to be more familiar with what you're doing, so I might start with you.
Yeah, thank you, Doug. I think it's important to say that these challenges for our minority businesses didn't just start in the COVID pandemic. They were amplified, and really the light was shown on those challenges even more so as it disproportionately affected some of our minority businesses. I'll hit on one program. I think we all focused on our communication and being intentional, back to that word about our communication, utilizing some of the CARES Act, the first round through. We had a small business grants. We raised about $800,000 for those the first round through to give out to small businesses. And we had a grading scale led by community members that made up a committee. And we weighted minority businesses, minority and women-owned businesses heavier to make sure we were really cognizant of making sure to put some impact there. And then that led to a broader discussion. We had a minority business enterprise grant created. We've raised $1.2 million to give to minority companies over the next 5 years. And those are businesses owned and operated by people of color. And 100% of the makeup of the committee making those decisions are people from our African American and our Latinx community here in Winston-Salem, Forsyth County. So it's not only about doing fundraising and grants, it's about broadening the conversation, putting more seats at the table, making sure everybody has an opportunity and is engaged in the discussion. And I'm proud of our communities for being intentional about that. And I think our region has really shown well throughout the refocus of diversity and inclusion across our country during the social justice issues. And so I think our region has responded well, and I'm proud of that. And I think it's something that people are noticing is a real reason to live here and want to really continue to grow your business here.
We've got about 10 minutes left. I want to toss in one thing that's come in over chat, and it has to do with being intentionally local. You know, we all wear the ball caps of our favorite ball team or whatever, and David LeBlanc from Truist suggested we should all wear a ball cap from a local business. I thought that was a great suggestion. And I'll piggyback on that. If you've ever gotten a note from Robbie Perkins, he has in his email signature the Carolina Core logo. And whether it be the High Point Chamber or Greensboro or Winston or the Carolina Core, you can imagine how many emails Robbie must send out across this country. And that's also a great idea. It sort of parallels Mark's idea. I got to drive home anyway. Well, I got to send that email anyway. What a great idea to have that tagline. So economic development and chambers of commerce are two sides of the same coin. You can't have a great business community without economic growth. You can't have economic growth unless you built a great business community. So let's just talk a little more. There's a great announcement, and I would argue it was in the Triad. Yes, Brent gets to claim credit for it and put it in his column, absolutely. But for those of us that drive the Triad every day, we know no matter where you're going, you go by Syngenta. So it is a great, and I suspect their ingress egress from across is regional. So Brent, I'm going to kick it off with you since you do have bragging rights today. Talk a little bit about what you're doing in economic development. And again, we've got about 7 or 8 minutes left.
Yeah, I don't know that I get bragging rights because that truly was a team effort. I mean, I can tell you everybody was involved in that one. It was such a big deal, and it was such high stakes, right? I mean, you just couldn't afford to lose 650 jobs at an average pay of 107,000. Just couldn't do that. I remember, as I said yesterday at the meeting, the first meeting was June 12th, 2019. And I remember like it was yesterday, the drive back to Greensboro after meeting with company officials who said, you need to put your best foot forward because we're looking at every headquarters we've got. And oh, by the way, we just moved one out of, I won't say where, but we just moved one to Chicago. So we mean it when we say it. And so, yeah, there's a lot going on in terms of teamwork around economic development. You mentioned the Carolina Core brand. There is teamwork very real teamwork behind that Carolina core brand where Greater Winston-Salem, High Point, Greensboro, Alamance, and others are working on national and international branding and really getting the word out about what's going on in our community. And I will tell you, economic development is hot right now. There's a lot going on. And what I would say to this group, because everybody on this call probably knows how hot the industrial market is. And I think people are starting to get concerned. I know I am, about running out of product if a lot of these projects come to fruition. Now it looks like there, maybe even some more product on the Syngenta site, since it looks like they may only use about half of their site to do their new headquarters. So I was kind of excited to see that and see that there might be some more product up front there. But lots of activity, lots of coordination. But we got to look 5 and 10 years down the line as well, and maybe even just a year down the line about getting some more product in the market.
Patrick?
Mind if I jump in? And mine's very local. I'm going to speak very quickly because there's so much to tell. But many of you, I hope, are familiar with Condon Yards. We're going to be opening Plant 7 April 1st. We'll do our grand opening May. If you're not familiar, that was started off as a little grant of $1.5 million from the Department of Commerce. The Condon family got involved. Now it's over 40 million. We have refurbished 2 beautiful hosiery mills over the right field fence. To give you an idea of demand, we haven't opened and we're 90% full in tenant space. So it's a wonderful, different type of space. We have an amazing prototype and production facility there. It's going to be a place for people to gather. David purchased a building across the street as well. So we have about 350,000 square feet right over the right field fence. And there's a lot going on down there. So I encourage you to stay tuned in on Condon Yards. We're very fortunate. That's our project. They have entrusted us to develop that, and we'll be doing lots of programming. And for those who may be dozing off, we're going to be putting our building on the market here at 1624 North Main. It's, 23,000 square feet. So Price Realty, Commercial Realty is going to do that. You heard it here first. So it's a great space. So those are my parting words for now.
Mark, why don't you?
Yeah, it's hard to follow breaking news from Patrick. So that's great. And I would just say, to what Brent mentioned about building the brand and the economic development side, we're all using digital marketing and digital advertising in a new way. And I think this has forced us to innovate. We can't, go visit a company as easily. They can't be here as easily. So we're targeting people. We know they're spending a lot more time on their phones in front of their screens. So we're utilizing that as an opportunity to really hit home and get our ads and our information out in front of people, and making sure that our digital presence really matches is strong, and being intentional about who's seeing our messaging. We spend a lot of money, to be honest, to make sure that you in the region don't see it. So if you don't see it, it's not that we're not doing it. We pay money to get it to people outside of the area that already knows about us. So we may screenshot some of those for the next time we do this, so you can see what it looks like. But I would say we're looking ahead, definitely on the product side. Got some new spec buildings coming out in the region, which are great. I think our developers all are in different parts of our region. It's not like a developer sticks to one county or the other. So there's a lot of times they have multiple things going on, and we're seeing interest from outside developers as well. And we're excited. It is a hot market right now. And the one thing that two questions that I have going forward is how the future of office space looks. I think people are going to want more space, maybe not necessarily less. They may want to spread out. That's my hope. You may see some more private offices come back. And then Doug, the last thing is the handshake coming back, or is the handshake done? I think that's going to be something, when we get back to these in-persons, like Brent said, are we shaking hands? Are we giving elbows still? Are we going to fist bumps only? I still, when we hire new people, I got to do the handshake. There's just a trust there. So I'm a handshake guy. I think I'm going to stick with it, but it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Hey, Mark, I just want to add to your comment about the office spaces, because we've seen within Condon Yards, we have anything from 250 to 20,000 square feet tenants. And we see more expansion than we do downsizing. We've created a lot of space for entrepreneurs, but I think people may continue to have some hybrid work schedule just because, you know, it's become part of our nature, but we're social animals. I just know we're going to have to get back together in offices. That's where the creative juices flow. You have to be able to read each other's body language and feed off people's energy. So I'd come on that. And then one important economic comment that I left out is, you know, we went to the county when the Catalyst project is a baseball stadium. When we went to the county a few years ago and said we'd have $100 million of new development around the baseball stadium in 10 years, we sort of got laughed out of the building. Well, we're at $185 million in 5 years. So it's happening. And I know that's important to all of you on this call. So I'm very optimistic, both locally, but I know we have some real champions in Brent, Mark, and others, especially the city of High Point EDC to champion those big projects.
Great. Well, I'm going to turn it back to Alex, but before I do, thank you, all the three of you. I know our audience enjoyed everything that you brought to us, and we all learned something about what's going on in the Triad. So with that, Alex, it's all yours.
Doug, thank you. You did a great job leading that conversation. We appreciate you. Patrick, Mark, Brent, thank you each for what you do for our communities. And it means a lot to all of us. You do a great job, and we're lucky to have you. Thanks for taking your time today and creating this great program for us. I think it shows in our great attendance and the caliber of folks on here. So thank you for that. I do want to recognize our sponsors again: C.T. Wilson Construction, Marsh McLennan, and S&ME. Without each of you guys, we certainly couldn't do what we do. And then lastly, I will remind everyone we're going to do a brief networking after this. Please, everybody who would like to be part of that, I encourage you to hang on. Very informal. You don't have to do anything. You automatically be thrown into a room with a few other folks. We look forward to seeing you on our next program. Thanks again, everybody.